Okay, we are now live. Heather, you can go ahead and click broadcast. And Chair Dewan, you may start the meeting.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 23rd meeting of the Downtown Development Authority Board. This is a new form of hosting our meeting via Zoom. It's new technology, so I appreciate everyone's patience and participation. Before we begin the meeting, I wanted the members of the public to be aware that you will have a chance to address the board meeting during public comment. And as we conduct our meeting, we will have a time frame for the public to weigh in. Each board member will be called on individually to speak during each item. A board member may say pass if they do not have a comment on that item. And I would remind board members to state their name before speaking, making a motion, etc. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote. And with that said, I'd ask Chad to take the roll call, please.
Absolutely. We're going to try this in alphabetical order. Ballline.
Here.
Mayor Byer.
Here.
Clayton.
Unmute, Lindsay.
Clayton. Kroom.
Here.
Dewan.
Present.
Hackney.
Present.
Kruger.
Here.
Lahanas.
Here.
Rhodey.
Can I stay unmuted until you need me?
I'm here.
Yeah. And Smith.
Here.
That completes a quorum.
Thank you. So item 1C on our agenda, or excuse me, we have our agenda as presented by staff. Are there any changes, staff, at this point to our agenda?
Yes, staff requests that you remove item 6E, the Evergreen property leases. We put this on as a placeholder in the event that there was a request to make any action regarding the leases. There is not, so Heather will just give an update on the properties under communications from staff.
Okay, very good. I will move to approve the agenda as presented with the amendment of the removal of item 6E. And is there a second?
Luke Hackney, I'll support.
So it's been seconded by Luke Hackney. If we could take a roll call on approval of the agenda as amended. Chad?
Okay. Ballline.
Yes.
And Mayor Byer.
Yes.
Clayton.
Yes.
Kroom.
Yes.
Dewan.
Yes.
Hackney.
Yes.
Kruger.
Yes.
Lahanas.
Yes.
Rhodey.
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes.
That passes 10-0.
Thank you. We will move on to item 1C. And we have a opinion from the city attorney. Let me pull that up just a moment, if you can bear with me. Okay, so with regard to our public comment section of our meeting, in order to maintain the order of the online public meeting, I'm going to offer to adopt a rule pursuant to MCL 15.263, limiting public comment to 2 minutes per individual. And I would ask for a second.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Lindsay Clayton. Again, if we could take a roll call vote on the approval of the time limit with regard to public comment. Chad?
Sure. Ballline?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Byer?
Yes.
Clayton?
Yes.
Croom? Croom?
Yes. Slow to unmute.
Dewan?
Yes.
Hackney?
Yes.
Kruger?
Yes.
Lahanas?
Yes.
Rhodey?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
So we will move on to item 1D. Members will take note. Longtime serving member Eric Sudol has offered his resignation from the board because of other commitments. Eric has contributed significantly to not only the Downtown Development Authority, but to a number of other committees in our community. He's certainly going to be missed, but I want to let him know how grateful we were for his service. And I would offer a motion to accept his resignation as presented and ask for a second.
So moved.
Moved by Luke Hackney. I think I will just say we will unanimously accept Eric's resignation and wish him well. And is that acceptable, or do I need to take a roll call for that? Well, we'll go ahead and take a roll call accepting the resignation. Chad, if you could call the roll, please.
Okay. Ballline?
Yes.
Mayor Byer?
Yes.
Clayton?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Croom?
Regretfully, yes.
Dewan?
Yes.
Hackney?
Yes.
Kruger?
Yes.
Lahanas?
Yes.
Rhodey?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Thank
Passes
you.
unanimously.
And we wish Eric well. We will move on to item 1E, the approval of our minutes from the February 20th meeting. If there are any changes to minutes, please state your changes at the present time. Seeing none, I will offer a motion to approve the minutes as presented and ask for a second.
Luke Hackney, support.
Thank you. All those, well, let's do a roll call again. Chad? The roll call is on the approval of the minutes from the February 20th meeting. If you could call the roll call, Chad.
Ballline?
Yes.
Mayor Byer?
Yes.
Clayton?
Yes.
Croom?
Yes.
Dewan?
Yes.
Hackney?
Yes.
Kruger?
Yes.
Lahanas?
Yes.
Rhodey?
Yes.
Smith?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. We will move on to our financial reports. And Heather, are you going to address the financial report in our packet?
Yes. So you have two financial reports this month due to us not having a board meeting in March. The first report is the February 2020 report. Not a whole lot of activity during that month for the DDA. I will point out that we did have expenses as far as the project development fund, and these were this relates to the speed bump that was purchased for the Grove Alley. Otherwise, nothing out of the ordinary. And then for the March Treasurer's Report, I wanted to point out, again, not a lot of activity. Under our TIP 2 DDA capture, You'll see on the screen, we have a negative in this line item of $8,485.75, and that is to personal property that was not paid, personal property in the TIF 2 district. Otherwise, we haven't had just our normal monthly expenses, our normally monthly transfers with minimal other expenses. Any questions?
It looks like Lindsay has a question.
No. I'm sorry,
Okay.
did I get something? I did not mean to. I'm having a really hard time viewing Heather's stuff. It keeps minimizing my screen. So if it's wonky, I apologize. It keeps making it like 2 inches. So I'm just trying to figure it out.
Any questions on those reports?
Okay, well, seeing none, we will move on to our next item on our agenda. Item 3A under written communications, we have the letter that was sent to the mayor and members of council with regard to the properties on Bogue Street. Also in our packet is the letter we received from Convexity with regard to their withdrawal, their letter of intent for the Evergreen RFQ. We also have a letter from the East Lansing Art Festival. We have a letter with regard to the Park District project and the notice of enforced delay. And then we also have a letter from Mark Bell from Harbor Bay. So those are all correspondence that we have received recently. We will move on to item 4A, communications from staff, our development projects update. And
Great,
Tom?
thank you, Peter. Yes, so thank you. Good to see everyone's face. All our development projects currently are largely on hold in compliance with the governor's order. We are working with them behind the scenes, preparing for a hopeful return on May 4th. We don't know exactly what's going to be allowed, but we'll need to respond to the actions of the governor. In terms of Park District, they have been able to move forward with some essential work in the public right-of-way. That includes our public infrastructure. The realignment of Albert is underway. I believe they've placed the north sidewalk there and are working towards a plan to close some of the Grand River sidewalks to do that part of the project in short order as well. They, as you see in the packet, did provide a notice of enforced delay. Eventually, I think the DDA, BRA, and council will need to take some action to extend the timeline for the development agreement based on the amount of time that they've been on this enforced delay because of the governor's orders. So that we're tracking that, and we will bring that forward when appropriate. In terms of Center City, we are very near final C of O for that project, just awaiting some final documentation. And there's 2 repairs to the parking facility that also have been deemed essential and will be moving forward. One is the protection of the various pipes in the parking structure. The other is some expansion joints that need to be repaired because they are causing damage to other parts of the building. Those are also in compliance with the governor's order and expecting to move forward here in the next week or so. In terms of the MSU FCU project, we've held several meetings with the developers as well as with their architects and engineers and consultants. They are moving forward with their plans and have indicated that they're targeting an early summer submittal of their necessary application formally. We've also had some conversations with the developers for the proposal at the Evergreen properties. We'll be talking about that a little bit later today. and reviewing a draft of a MOU that we've worked with them to draft. In terms of the Evergreen Infrastructure, the design work is continuing. We've been coordinating with the various projects. We've also had some conversations with the People's Church and making sure we're trying to coordinate all the complexities and the various aspects of the very important infrastructure work. Staff has been keeping very busy searching for any available resources for businesses. We've attended many webinars from the Downtown Association, the Economic Development Alliance, our partners with other cities and what they're doing with CDBG monies, the MEDC and the state, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, and various others. We're coordinating all that information through direct outreach to businesses. We're also updating the city's website very regularly with those very vital resources and grants and loans and federal programs, et cetera. The DMB met last week. They have sent a letter to us, which we just got this morning and haven't been able to post. Essentially, the main thrust of their letter is they are requesting that the DDA consider providing grant opportunities for businesses located within the DMB district. They also recognize that local organizations are limited in financial funding, so they're not requesting a specific grant amount, but they are requesting that the DDA consider a funding amount that would allow several of their 192 member businesses the opportunity to apply for monetary support. In addition, they are requesting that the DDA consider limiting application restrictions by allowing businesses that have already received federal, state, or local emergency funding the opportunity to apply for said grants. They're also involved in conversations around marketing, mostly anticipating the period after the stay-home order is lifted and how they can best help to market the downtown and help businesses. Last two items, Gotcha Scooters that had received a license that's valid until January 30th has received clearance from the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office that they are essential. And so they've been allowed to redeploy. The city has issued some advice and hopes that Gotcha will help with outreach related to how people can safely use these during this pandemic. Lastly, I just wanted to report that the housing study is on hold until further notice. I'm expecting we'll need to update the scope of that study based on what information is made available to us over the next coming days and weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Are there any board members that have questions with regard to Tom's presentation? Seeing none, we will move on to the public portion of our meeting, communications from the audience, item 5 on our agenda. I wanted to let the callers know that each caller that is in the queue will be called on. We'll have 2 minutes to address the board. At the end of the 2 minutes, they will be placed back on mute. Callers will be identified with the last 3 digits of their phone number. And when called on, you will be unmuted. If you wish to speak or if you do not wish to speak, you can just simply say that you pass, and then we will move on to the next caller in the queue. It is helpful to our clerk if you do choose to speak, if you could state your name and address before addressing the board, that would be appreciated. So with that said, Heather, would you be able to call on those that are wishing to address the DDA at the present time?
Actually, Nicole is gonna handle that.
Okay. So Nicole, if you could go ahead, and if there is anyone that is requested an opportunity to address the DDA, now is the time.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Dewan. This is Nicole Bartel. The first caller we have is a phone number ending in 069. Again, that's phone number 069. You are now unmuted if you wish to address the board.
Hi there, this is Dylan Rush with the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. My address is 500 East Michigan Avenue in Lansing. Just wanted to make myself available for an agenda item later on for the DDA business support options, talk about the submission we provided to you for small business relief. Thanks.
Thank you. The next person in the queue, Nicole?
Yep, the next number is the number ending in 333. You may now address the board if you'd like.
Hi, this is Chris Root at 729 Sunset Lane. I heard that Tom mentioned very briefly the many places that y'all are looking for information about possible support to small businesses and included the CDBG money in that list. I am hoping that there will be some information about that CDBG money provided during the discussion of that item on the agenda later, so that it can be clear what money from that source might be utilized for that purpose before you vote on using the DDA money for it. I think that would be helpful for everybody to understand more about. That's all.
Thank you, Chris. Nicole, the next person in the queue?
The next caller is a number ending in 492. Number 492, if you would like to address the board, you may at this time.
Hi, everyone. Mark Bell, CEO, Harbor Bay. Hope everyone's doing well, all things considered. Thank you certainly in advance for your leadership. We did submit a letter, so I'll let that speak for itself. I think a couple other minor points is consider what I would suggest if there's going to be DDA money available to small businesses in the downtown core or in East Lansing broader, so to speak. My suggestion is to really look at the return on investment of those funds. I certainly don't have the magic wand, and I'm sure you guys wish you had the magic wand. We're all dealing with very difficult circumstances. Nevertheless, on that ROI comment, try to think and problem solve and be creative. An example would be in many of the discussions I'm having with small businesses is that many of them did not receive any PPP funds from the federal government. The question then becomes why, and that often is because the process was too rigorous. They don't have a bank that supports the SBA program. They don't have an attorney or an accountant to help facilitate it. So one idea perhaps could be is using DDA funds to help interact and interface with banks and lawyers and accountants to help these small businesses in the second round of the federal stimulus package, which is coming through legislation right now, which just passed yesterday, or maybe Tuesday. But I'm just guessing that funds are scarce and limited, obviously, and to be spread around to all these businesses is going to be very difficult. A lot can go a long way, but I would highly suggest in looking at creative ways to enhance that ROI and whether it also be matching programs or what have you. How do you turn $1 into $2, into $4, into $8, and so on and so forth? So again, thank you for everyone's leadership on this call, and everyone please be safe in the meantime.
Thank you. Nicole, are there additional members or of the public that wish to address the DDA?
Yes, there are. There is one, a Sarah Preiser, I believe they're labeled as. It's last name Preisser. You are now, oh, just one moment. Sorry for the delay, just one moment, please.
there, this is Sarah Pricer. I'm here to listen, but I didn't have any public comment. But thanks for the service during this difficult time.
Thank you. Nicole, are there additional members of the public that wish to address the DDA?
There are. We have a couple more people. One person has joined the call and has identified themselves as call-in user 1. So if you have joined the call with that name, you may address the board. Again, this is call-in user 1. Did you have any comments for the board? Okay, if it's all right to move on, we have 2 more folks on the call.
Sure.
Next, we have a number ending in, let's see, 393, who I believe is John McGraw on the call. Did you want to address the board at this time?
Hi guys, John McGraw here. I'll be representing River Caddis for action item Waiter Down. Hope everyone's doing well, and thank you for hearing us today. That's all at this time.
Thank you. And you say that we have 1 additional caller, Nicole?
That's correct. I have unmuted who I believe is also Kevin McGraw on the call, ending in 800.
Hi guys, Kevin McGraw, 1038 Trowbridge. Thanks for doing the virtual meeting today. It's crazy times, but John said it correctly. He'll be speaking for River Caddis today. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole, does that conclude all the members of the public that wish to address the DDA?
That is all of the attendees listed in the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will close the communications from the audience and move on to our business agenda. Item 6A, the DDA's fiscal year 2021 budget and tax rate resolution. Tom Fehrenbach?
Yes, I'll make some brief comments and then I'll kick it over to walk you through it briefly and then take any of the questions that you have. I want to first of all say thanks to Heather. She's put a tremendous amount of work along with the finance team into this budget. And unfortunately, I think we're very aware that it's going to need to change significantly. We are not yet aware of what the impacts of COVID-19 will be on our financial picture, but I think it's relatively certain that it will need to change. So today's action is really just to keep the budget process moving forward so that the city council can pass their budget in compliance with state law. And I think they'll be in a similar mindset approaching the budget where we will not have had the time to change our projections and kind of unwind all of the tough work that was done in light of the new environment we'll find ourselves in here in the future. So again, our recommendation is that you go ahead and pass this budget, knowing that we'll need to certainly revisit it at some later time and probably make some significant changes. So with that, I'll just kick it over to Heather. She can walk you through it briefly, take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Heather?
Yes. So I'm just going to focus on the far right column, which is the 2021 proposed budget. The first section here is our revenues, our property, our DDA special millage, our TIF 1 capture, and our TIF 2 capture. Just a side note, our TIF 1 capture is our pass-through that goes back to reimburse for the bond payments for the TIF 1, which is the parking under the Marriott Hotel. We do see a increase in our DDA special millage capture, but we do see a decrease in our TIF 2 DDA tax capture for this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. We have our lease rental income going down for $9,000 from waste management, who leases all of the trash enclosures throughout the downtown. We're estimating $13,000 in interest income for the upcoming year. And then we are looking at reallocating $81,500 of reappropriated equity. And I'll get into this a little bit more after I go through the budget. And this goes back to the Evergreen properties and the accounts for that. Going on, we will receive this upcoming fiscal year a payment of $14,000 related to the 303 Abbott parcel that was sold as part of the Park District project. So that is our revenue line item. Moving on to expenditures, we have our salary and fringe benefits. Those have not changed in the past couple of years. That covers the cost for any staff who is working on any of the DDA projects and the fringe benefits charges. Our operating supplies have stayed the same. Our municipal service agreement is going down this fiscal year, and this is based on a formula. So as you can see, we're going to go from $248,000 to $123,815 from compared to last fiscal year. Legal services.
This is Jim Croom. Heather, what was the change in that formula that caused the big decrease?
It has to do with the new development project and the brownfield captures. And so that all becomes part of that formula that actually reduces that capture that we then pay back for the downtown and cleaning and snow removal and all of that. So it's based on a formula that our finance department puts together for us.
Okay, that's good.
Audit services, communications from telephone, all those are pretty standard. Moving down, our project development fund, this is the fund where we fund all of our projects. We typically do sidewalk, our art projects through this. This also includes always a line item of to be determined for any projects that we decide the DDA chooses to fund throughout the year. And I'll go into detail and further down of what those projects entail. Repairs and maintenance, this covers any expenses that we have. It could be the wayfinding signs, any of our trash room repairs, any of those items. We have our city computer rental, which has stayed the same as in past years. And then we have our contribution to the debt service. That is gone up just slightly, and this is for our bond payment. And then the contribution to the parking fund, the $162,715. Again, that ties to that TIP 1 capture that I show up in our revenue. It's just the DDA is a pass-through for that. And again, that is for the parking structure located under the Marriott Hotel. Any questions on that section? Okay, moving on, I'll just go over the Evergreen properties. Evergreen properties, the lease rental income for the next year, we're expecting that we'll see a reduction in that. Combination of two things. We're looking at 9-month leases. We tend to do 12-month leases. This year, we're looking at 9-month leases. And then we will also not be renting the property at 334 Evergreen. So that's why that number, you see that reduction going down.
Heather, it's Jim Croom again, sorry. On a 9-month lease, are we planning to charge more on a monthly basis?
No, we're keeping it as the same.
Okay, I've noticed landlords that offer 9-month leases, as I peruse their websites, do have a higher charge for that because there's some value in having a shorter lease. So it's kind of a win-win for the residents and for the landlord. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. No, I was just going to say on that note, we tend to see the same tenants stay in these houses for a couple of years. So some of these, this will be their 3rd year going in of living in this property, especially for the one. They did talk to them about maybe doing a rent increase. But as you know, the DDA does have that clause in the lease also, which allows us to terminate 90 days prior. So they are taking that risk, you know. Also, we can give them a 90-day notice if a project moves forward to terminate the lease. So we felt overall we would just keep the leases as is at the same rate.
That's a great explanation because it's very valuable to have the same group stay in the house. It's expensive to turn them over. So thank you. Great thought
Correct.
process.
Yep. Moving down, we have a reappropriated equity line item of $218,475. And that ties back again to that discussion I'll have about the equity, that equity that was shown above in the general fund, the DDA's general fund account. So moving on for our expenses, we'll see a small reduction in our contract services. Again, this is due to having one less property that we're paying management fee on, and other expenses. Our insurance, bonds, and claims, this is a slight reduction from last year. Utilities, utilities have gone up a little bit, so we are including that, just a small increase for that line item. Our repairs and maintenance will go back down to normal this year. As you can see, there was a large increase last year, and that was because there were some substantial improvements we had to do on a couple of properties, including 314 Evergreen, which is a large apartment building. Our permits and license fees, this is the fees for our rental licenses, and then our taxes. Then go down to our additional expenses, which is our debt service. We have our principal payment of $110,000. We're estimating that our interest expense will be $202,135 overall for the expenses. So any questions on the Evergreen properties? If none, I will now go down to, here we go, next page. So this is our project development fund. We're estimating, or we're saying the budget will be $255,265. This includes our facade improvement program, a line item for sidewalk projects, some bike loops, some new newspaper racks and benches, landscaping and planters, the DDA district art project, the smart zone rent backstop, and then our earmark for projects to be determined. Due to the Evergreen properties, we needed to reallocate funds to cover the expenses for the Evergreen properties for this year. So we felt instead of taking it all out of the DDA's fund balance, that we would use some current funds available through this year's budget. The 67.5 is going to offset some of the costs for the Evergreen properties. That 67,500, along with, go back up here, this $14,000 that we're receiving for 303 Abbott, that equals the 81,500. So that's what we're going to use in this fiscal year budget to help offset the cost for the Evergreen property. So does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Any questions?
Are there any questions on the budget as presented by Heather?
Bill, Heather, what is the fund balance?
We're estimating for June of 2020, about $839,895.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So Heather, are you going to speak to the resolution then on the budget?
Sure, this is a resolution. Let me bring that up here. So this is our budget and tax resolution. This is something that we approved in past years. We just state that the property tax millage rate that we're proposing, along with that will be 1.700 mils based on mills of tax on each 1,000 of taxable value on the real and tangible personal property. And then the DDA just needs to approve this separately, this resolution, from the approval of the budget. So you'll have two different motions.
Okay. I know that Tom referenced, given the uncertain times, that likely we will come back and revisit this budget. Can you explain that process of how that, what that would look like?
Sure.
Are you speaking
So I think what is necessary is that the DDA takes action so that the council can then schedule and hold its public hearings on the budget, which I think they are in the process of doing. And then so they will pass the budget per the charter and state law on time. And then at that point, I think we're continuing to try to figure out a process for making projections about how our financial situation will change. It's clearly a very challenging time. And I think as that information becomes available, we'll need to come back to the board and ultimately come back to council as well to recommend some changes.
So our action today, so we're clear, is just simply to satisfy the state requirement?
Yes, and set the framework for our budget based on the expectations prior to COVID.
Right. Are there any board members that wish to make a comment or offer a motion? Well, I will offer a motion.
Lindsay does, but she's got to unmute herself.
I'm sorry. I have people around me in my background, so I tend to mute. Sorry. Do we need to open this up for public hearing?
No, we've determined that, and we've confirmed with the city attorney that we do not need to hold a public hearing at the DDA level. That will happen as part of the council's budget process.
Is that how we usually do it?
It's been sort of a moving target as the law has changed. I think last year, out of an abundance of caution, we did hold a public hearing at the DDA level and then again at the council level, but we determined that that was not necessary. So we did not need to publicly notice via the paper and that sort of thing. That'll happen during the council's budget process.
Okay. I understand that for now. I personally, for future budgets, feel like it's really important that we notify that we have public hearings at our level. I know that for planning commission, we'd have public hearings for every single site plan and things like that. And I think that the DDA budget should be something that we should be having a public hearing regarding. So I guess I can handle not doing that right now, but I don't feel comfortable in the future passing a budget without a public hearing.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Are there other comments or questions? Well, I will offer a motion to approve the budget as presented and ask for a second.
Luke Hackney, I'll support.
Thank you, Luke. Chad, if you could call the roll call.
Okay, Ballline.
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Duan,
Yes.
Hackney,
I agree with Lindsay, but yes.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yep. Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Now we will move on to the resolution that's been presented. Are there questions of DDA members to staff with regard to the resolution?
This is the same millage it is now, right?
Yes.
Correct.
I have a question. So would the resolution be, is the resolution required just as the budget is required? And would we be able to amend the resolution moving forward at a later time?
I'm going to ask if Tom Yaden is on the line. Maybe he can chime in.
No, I think it's a lot more complicated to amend the taxing resolution than just the budget itself, because that's, I think that's locked in. I haven't actually researched that, but I think once that's passed by council, it's locked in.
Because remember, it's going to be on the July tax bill, so there's not a lot of time.
It's gonna be levied now, so.
Yeah, it'd be very complex to change it.
All right, thanks for the explanation, Tom. Is there a motion to approve the resolution or support the resolution?
So moved by Kroom.
I will second that. Chad, if you could call the roll again.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Barr,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Passes 10-0.
Thank you. We will move on to our next item on our business agenda, item 6B, the DDA's business support options during COVID-19. And Heather, are you going to speak to that, or Tom?
It'll be me. And thank you. As we are all aware, this is an extremely difficult and challenging time for all of us, especially businesses. There's an enormous need for resources to bridge gaps, to keep especially our small businesses in operation because of closures or operational changes that were necessary in light of the pandemic that we're all experiencing. Staff has been keeping abreast of resources at the federal, state, and regional level. We're sharing info directly with businesses and through the city website, as I mentioned earlier. We're also looking into city-directed resources such as the CDBG funds, which I will talk a little bit about where we're at with those in a moment, and also looking at things like fees and parking, and looking forward to a day where we can help with the recovery effort as well. But given the urgency and enormity of the need, the DDA may consider repurposing its unprogrammed or discretionary funds to assist in the direct business support. Heather and I have determined that we have access to approximately $324,000 in the project development fund that could be used immediately for any support efforts. It should be noted and reiterated that the DDA itself is likely also to face significant challenges ahead with our financial situation. And also, although the current need is immediate and daunting, the DDA may wish to retain some funds to be used in the future, as presumably some strategic needs may become more apparent. With that context, staff has been exploring options in an attempt to support businesses directly while also being fair to our DDA businesses. We have three options that have percolated for your consideration. They're all still in need of more thought, and we certainly welcome your feedback, and we welcome other ideas as well. Staff continues to brainstorm, and we're also keeping in touch with our network to see what other communities are doing. There's been some good ideas. We've been able to incorporate some of those into our suggestions today. The first is essentially a grant program. LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, has done a great job in standing up a program that has now doled out support grants of $10,000 each using funds from the MEDC, and grants of $5,000 to $10,000 using funds from the Lansing Economic Development Corporation. They have the infrastructure in place for a fairly turnkey operation and could work with staff to retool it for East Lansing and our DDA in short order, which they would do for a small fee. Advantages to partnering with them would be to take advantage of their expertise, infrastructure, staff capacity, but most importantly, the speed at which they can get the assistance out the door. As in their proposal, you can see that the goal would be to get funds in people's hands by May 14th and 15th. In terms of their deliverables, they would provide a web-based application that we could plug into the DDA webpage. They would work with staff and any DDA appointees to develop scoring criteria, frequently asked questions, and Q&A functionality. They'd help us set up review panels. They'd give guidance and assistance based on their experience now in addressing and eliminating conflicts of interest. They would support the city and DDA in terms of outreach and also help us with the reporting structure and functionality. They have agreed to do this for a 10% fee. However, I did confirm yesterday that if we made a request for a $150,000 level of support at $35,000 grants, they are willing to effectuate this scope for $10,000. They did include example eligibility, scoring criteria, and review process for your consideration. If we do decide that this program makes sense, we would welcome your feedback and input, especially in these areas of review, scoring, and eligibility, but also how to best keep the DDA engaged in the process. Another option, I don't know if you want me to go through all three now or take them individually.
I think it would make sense in the context of our discussion to just go through everyone now, and then we can maybe go back and revisit any particular item, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. So another option is to consider a program to offset licensing or other fees for downtown businesses. Approximately $70,000 is expected to be due in June 15th for businesses in the DDA. The DDA could partially or fully fund these or fund a portion in conjunction with a request of the City Council to delay, defer, or forbear the fees for this fiscal year. If the DDA does fund directly, staff would suggest an equal amount or a cap to keep it equitable across the licensed payers as they pay various amounts. The third option.
This is Jim Kroon. What types of fees are those?
There would be restaurant fees, entertainment permits and licenses, and those types of licenses and permits.
Thanks.
So option three is still probably the most work in progress, but essentially it's a type of loan program involving gift cards. So this concept is that the DDA would set an amount and a policy for businesses to apply to the DDA, and the DDA would purchase a set amount of gift cards directly from that business and pay them immediately. We'd then set up an e-commerce platform where the DDA would resell those over time. The business would be able to use the funds immediately for qualifying expenses. And again, we'd sell them over time and set some future date for when they would become redeemable. So for instance, you could set a limit of $1,000 per business and they're redeemable on July 1st, for instance. At that point, the business would need to provide services as they're redeemed after July 1st in that example. Obviously, it really should be approached as more of a grant situation, as not all of the cards will likely sell. Some businesses may not be able to ultimately redeem the cards, and there's risk for the DDA and some risk for the public purchaser who need to be informed of that as part of the sale. Or otherwise, we'd have to create a fund for the DDA to refund any of those that cannot be redeemed. In terms of the benefits, it would be immediate cash, again, directly as quickly as possible to the businesses now. It would also be a way to engage the public in a support effort. And if to the extent that cards did sell, we'd be able to replenish those funds, which the DDA could use for other programs. Lastly, I just wanted to note that in terms of CDBG monies, we are allotted our current bucket of funds under the normal course of business. There's also a $289,000 fund that we have access to now, and specific to the COVID response. The final guidance from HUD has not been fully baked at this point, but the initial guidance does suggest that we can use some of these funds to support businesses with low to moderate income workers under certain guidelines. We are currently working towards recommendations that we're preparing for the council. We will need to hold 2 public hearings. Likely both will be set shortly here for May. And we will make recommendations on both the COVID funds and the CDBG regular funds. I think you're likely to see some business support opportunities with those funds. I believe that the council will want to think citywide, not just within the DDA district, because the monies come to the city as a whole. We do have businesses outside of the DDA, obviously. You may also potentially see some other support for low-income housing or other needs for low-income folks. And we expect to be discussing that with council in short order. So sorry for my long-winded presentation, but I'd be happy to take questions.
Tom, I just wanted to, I don't know if I acknowledged communication that was received from leaders in the Glencare neighborhood. Sarah Pricer was very actively involved and very helpful in assisting and coming up with some ideas that was submitted to the DDA in the form of written communication. So in the context of whatever decision and path we move forward with, there was a number of really very creative ideas on how to leverage purchasing power if the DDA was committing resources to any one particular project. So I'd like DDA members at least to revisit the information that was in our packet. I don't know if I acknowledged it previously, but it's under our written communications. And I want to thank Sarah for her very creative talents and assistance. Are there questions of DDA members to Tom about what he has presented?
Can you go over?
I have one. This is Jeff.
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on it rather than questions, but you know, with respect to time and urgency for a lot of the businesses in our community, and acknowledging the fact that staff and operations at the city are probably more constrained and less efficient now than they ever have been. I know that it's you know, it's the net effect of all of this. Asking for us and the DDA and the staff to put together an e-commerce platform in a timely fashion to allow this to occur for businesses is going to be challenging. I don't see us not doing it. I think it's a great opportunity for us to get it out into the marketplace and make it a resource for our businesses. But in the interim, in the very short period of time we have to effectuate change for these companies, I would recommend a combination of, you know, the first option you mentioned, Tom, and a, you know, potentially a blend of the second. You know, doling out 10,000 to have, you know, the funds distributed to the companies is a small price to pay for the amount of time and effort and energy it requires to get that done in a very short timeline. And then, you know, option two, it's roughly $70,000 that we're going to be seeing as a need in fees and permitting and other. we could potentially offset some costs there. And again, making it, smoothing that spike for the companies as much as we can. Those are my thoughts.
I have a question for Tom. Was it second option is just waive the fees for the period? You were going in and out when I.
Sorry about that. No, the DDA does not actually control the fees. We would either need to fund a portion or fully fund them. But what I was saying is you could potentially do a partial funding of them and then request that the city council delay or forbear the other portion. Or you could just request that the council do that and not fund it.
This is Jim Kroom. I'm very supportive of the first option. I appreciate LEAP having set up the program. We're fortunate that they've, I think, already done it for Lansing or another municipality, and so they probably kicked the tires on this pretty well. I'm in agreement that the administrative fee is appropriate. We have to pay for the expediency and the expertise. That's just a cost of doing business. And these businesses, from what I understand, will benefit from direct grants now. And we need to choose the quickest way possible. I know that the Royal Oak DDA has committed $2 million from, I believe, property sales or some source, similar to what we're doing. They looked in their budget for what money was potentially available. And they're self-administering, which I don't know that that's the way to go. Very complex. And they're trying to get theirs out the door by May 15 also, and in the hands of people. And they still need to work on the process as we would of developing criteria and so on. I would want those criteria to make some examination of who's received other funds from the federal government, as it were, and if folks have received assistance there, maybe it should go into the hands of others so that it's evened out a little bit. And to the comment earlier, I would point out that at least the Downtown Management Board and maybe other city resources do have links for businesses, and the DMB folks and staff have reached out to businesses to assist them in obtaining some of the programs available. So those, I think, would be my comments, supportive of the first option. And I'm always one that would like to push the city to use its budget to help on the second option to the extent they can. It would be best if the city, I believe, chooses the highest amount of the 70 it could, without the additional complexity of going back and forth between the DDA. I would like all our available funds to go right to businesses. Maybe wishful thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'd like to just state that I don't know if I need to recuse myself or not, but I do want to be transparent, and I will at least offer to the DDA and the city attorney to see if I need to recuse myself. I do work with LEAP. I happen to be their insurance agent. If the DDA elected to move forward and participate in this program with LEAP, I wouldn't benefit financially from it, but nonetheless, I don't want to have any, I want to be transparent. I don't want to have any potential, impropriety. So if I need to be recused, that's fine. I would ask for the DDA's opinion and then perhaps turn the meeting over to Jim Kroom to administer.
Luke Hackney, I honestly don't believe that would sway your opinion in one way or another, and don't see that as a problem. I don't think I would vote for that.
And again, perhaps Mr. Yaden can weigh in for us, but I'm happy to recuse myself.
I can, Peter. The ethics code only requires a disclosure, It does, the city's ethic code does not require you to recuse yourself once you've disclosed. Recusals are appropriate if in your own mind, your decisions are influenced by your relationship with the party versus just, your decision making as a impartial decision maker. So that determines whether you should recuse yourself or not.
Okay.
Luke Hackney, can I speak?
Yes, please.
Just in the interest of full disclosure, I do chair the local district finance authority / smart zone, actually because of the DDA, I chair that. And that is administered by LEAP. I would say unequivocally, this won't influence my decision, and actually go as far as to say, I would strongly, as much as I hate to disagree with Jim ever, oppose working with LEAP on this for a number of reasons that I can get into later if necessary. But for full disclosure, I do work for a company that hires, or work for a board that hires LEAP services.
Can I just weigh in quickly on the plan? George
Yes.
Johannes. So just to say, I support the idea of grants and having LEAP administered, because I think it's to set up a new apparatus with staff to do that would be burdensome and time consuming and slow us down. And I think the best way to have an impact is get that money to people quickly. I do like Jim's idea that maybe having money from other sources doesn't completely exclude you from getting money from our source, but certainly that they take that into consideration, so that if someone has already gotten a $10,000 grant from somewhere, you try to give it to people who have not gotten anything yet. I think would be a good criteria, but not to exclude other people. I don't think we should do that. And as far as the city, we plan to come to council next week to talk about reduction of license fees, something I proposed to council when this first happened. We had thought about doing up to a $2,000 reduction in their license fee. I don't think it's required, but if the DDA would kick in some of that money, perhaps as a offset to the council's reduction, the city will likely be doing other money elsewhere in other areas to recommend, so that I think that the city will be experiencing quite a bit of participation in trying to help people. So that's all I have. Thanks.
If I may, very quickly, this is Jeff again. I sat through the first round of reviews when LEAP did this for the region, and we narrowed down 1,750 applications into 60 grantees. The application and the review process is very thorough. It's quantitative, it's objective, and it does ask questions about have you or are you receiving funds from other sources. So there is a very rigorous and thoughtful process to the application side of it, and the review process has a very objective approach to it and transparent. So I sat through the original process for this, so I can tell you that it is exactly as you're describing.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any additional board members' comments?
If I may, Greg Ballline here. I guess this is a real dilemma for us. I mean, a lot of businesses are hurting. There's not going to be any one good way to go about getting money in people's hands as soon as possible. And I think that no matter what we do, I think that you're going to lead to some people feeling excluded from the process, or not a lack of funds to go to those businesses that are really hurting. And, in the interest of fairness, it seems to me that it would be best to just divide up the funds between the DDA businesses and just distribute them. But that's just one man's opinion.
Luke Hackney, jumping on, I 100% agree with that. Earlier, Tom described, LEAP was doing a good job with how it was dispersed, and I would go as far as to say I completely disagree with that. Jeff, I would go as far as to say I completely disagree with that. I also disagree that the $10,000 or more would be a good use of our funds, I think, in an effort for fairness, in an effort to dole these funds out, what I believe would be much quicker. I think splitting them evenly and distributing them amongst the businesses that are defined in the DDA district would make a lot more sense.
Out of curiosity, how many companies are defined as being in the DDA?
Who are we asking? I believe between 140 and 160.
Tom or Heather, do you guys know?
We don't know
larger
that.
than-
Yeah.
The downside might be, the downside, Luke, might be to larger businesses or businesses, downside for us and for the community. Some businesses just don't need it, or they're large enough they don't need it. And I know the large businesses are hurting too and are important to our town. So not to diminish them, but the small businesses have individuals who are working and paychecks that need to go out. And that's one reason why I might not go across the board. It just feels like we can adjust it according to need. And yeah, with any program, there's going to be unhappy folks. So something to think about. I'm thinking about it. It's a good comment.
300 divided by 160 is $1,875 each.
Luke Hackney, I would take that money in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
I just
think
want to
that-
clarify, there are
Okay.
more businesses than that, and within the DDA district, I think the number you may be working off is the DMB district. And if you recall, the DDA district is larger than the DMB. DMB only goes from Delta to Collingwood, where the DDA goes from Delta all the way down to Hagedorn. So none of the businesses would be included in that number from Collingwood to Hagedorn.
It just seems like we would be diluting the money so much that it would be so little of help. And when you think about a CVS or a Target, not that they're not hurting, but as compared to a local business that I think has to try to get by, I do think that, there might be professional service firms that aren't being hurt as bad as, let's say, a restaurant. And I think that some discernment between different businesses would be appropriate. So I would not be supporting if everyone went the direction of across the board, that's the way we go. But I would be more inclined to do some sort of a grant process where we could look at the specific circumstance and try to be a little bit more impactful for places that are having more of a harm, for instance.
To George's point, professional corporations is one example. Are landlords included in our district? In other words, rental property owners?
There are certainly some in the district. The DDA district is paid by the property owners. So we don't maintain a list of all companies that exist within the DDA. So Heather and I would have to fashion a plan to populate that list. We do have a list of, I believe, 192 businesses within the DMB, which is, as Heather mentioned, is a subset of the DDA.
Wow. Is Leap still on, or can someone speak to whether, I think we fashion criteria. If we propose something and allocated funds, criteria would then be fashioned by a committee or at a later date between now and distribution. Is that correct?
That's correct. Leap is still on the line and could respond, but I can say that they've indicated there certainly is flexibility, and they want to hear the guidance from the DDA itself in terms of the criteria. They just provided example criteria for this discussion, but it's not fully set.
This is Lindsay Clayton. You mentioned something about Leap would be willing to reduce their fee with grants, and did you say it was $35,000 grants? Or I was having problems with the computer, sorry.
30 grants of 5,000 each, for a total grant program of 150,000, would essentially kind of be manageable by them for $10,000.
So staff's not proposing we scrape all available funds. You're proposing about half of what might be available in your prior analysis?
Yes, that's what we're proposing as a option to consider.
Because the logic would be that DDA would still need the remaining 50% of the funds for its operations and to other causes.
I think our framework for the thinking was to try to establish a balance between the amount of the grant and the number of grants that we're able to provide to be somewhat useful, and that was our attempt to balance that. To your second point, we do think that there are things we could do now. There's likely things that we can do in the future to help the support effort that may be more strategic as we're made aware of, what the rules will be and where the needs are over the next weeks and months.
Okay, so some keep the powder dry money. Okay.
Are there any additional questions of staff about what has been proposed?
This is
Hello.
Mike.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Sorry. Are we voting on something with regards to how to use this money right now, or is this just staff presentation time?
I believe the intent would be us to take action on this today as a business item.
Wow.
This is Lindsay. I would also, I do have some reservations about just doing $35,000 grants when we have such a great need. Even if we were to give, $1,000 to more businesses, to me, that is easier to swallow. I'm very concerned about spending $10,000 and only 30 of our businesses getting it. And then LEAP gets $10,000 of that. That's twice as much as these grantees are getting. And while I don't want to put an undue burden on city staff, I also don't feel comfortable paying LEAP twice of what we're giving in grants. I don't see how that's really fair to our business community.
One thing I would have about that is how much time would it take staff to get the money out there designing this? And I think you'd be spending more probably in staff time so the money would just be hidden. And then how would the staff be compensated if they go well over and above the DDA allocation? Because the staff that we utilize are dual use staff. They're used by the city as well. So, we can't just put extra work onto folks and say that that's a hidden cost. It's a real cost, and the city would just be picking that up then. I just think in more efficient ways to use a system that's already in place. I think to administer that many grants, I don't see $10,000 as being an exorbitant amount for the time and services you need to do that.
I guess I have to believe we're going to have fewer site plans and we're going to have fewer permits for things. We don't have the art festival right now. We don't have the jazz festival. I personally feel like even if we don't have a grant where they have to submit, maybe it's not a strict review process where you don't have to tick a lot of boxes and it doesn't have to take hours of time, but how can we honestly say that we're okay giving LEAP twice as much as as one business would get? I can't stomach that. So I think we've got to get a little bit creative, maybe with staffing, but that's just not, I will not be able to support that. I'm sorry.
Luke Hackney piggybacking off of that, especially considering that like hundreds in that scenario would get $0.
Jeff Smith, I'm 100% in favor, and I did recommend to LEAP at the time to potentially reduce the grant allocation to each company so that more companies could receive it. If we're talking about a couple hundred companies in the DDA that are potentially eligible for this, I would say let's try to reduce maybe the amount that's granted and increase, if not double or triple, the number of companies that we could provide this grant to. At any rate, having a timeline to distribute this program or get a program like this in place, we need to take action immediately, or we're going to lose companies if we haven't already. There are going to be several companies, if not dozens of companies in our downtown that will not reopen. And every day that goes by, another company will close. So if we don't do this in this window of time with the DDA window open, I would suggest we give ourselves a deadline for having a very clear line of sight of how this is going to get deployed, maybe by the end of next week.
So Jeff, are you saying instead of 5,000 for the number, double it, the number of people, and say 2,500 per, and double the number of recipients? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I could
if not
support that.
triple.
I could support that if, it just seems to me it has to be enough to have some sort of an impact. And if we're giving $1,000, I don't know if that's enough of an impact, but
1,000 is
could
a lot of
support what
money to companies.
Oh,
Luke,
yes.
I think Luke is a testament to that. $1,000 is a lot to a company right now.
I mean, it's in rent if we're being practical.
That's a significant amount of money to a lot of companies, especially the independents that are in our downtown. That's a lot of money.
And I would like to add, this is Lindsay Clayton again, every little bit helps. So if we are able to help more people with less money, I'm okay with that, because we need to try to impact as many people as possible. And I think that is much better than saying, than being really more difficult and saying, oh, well, we're not going to give it to you because your need isn't enough. I think almost every business in this town is not only affected by COVID, we are impacted by the fact that our population has suddenly decreased for the most part to 50%. So we're just like any place up in northern Michigan in the summer. All of a sudden, all of your potential customers are gone. So that makes us different than a lot of communities.
Great points, Lindsay. Jim Kroom here. I'm totally in favor of smaller amounts, but I do favor having LEAP do it. We can't. This program needs to start now, and the money needs to get in now, and we can't redesign this thing from whole cloth and get it done. That's a poor use of staff time, and as George said, the cost would be hidden. I think we need to respect the city manager's view that he needs staff elsewhere on this. I know this is an emergency and we could reallocate them, but we have an alternative avenue that we can use that I'm happy to pay for.
This is
Greg
Jill.
Wall.
Can Jill?
Go ahead, Joe.
And I think the 150 is too small. And we talk about sidewalks. What good are sidewalks if every building's going to be empty? So my proposal would be 250 at 2,500 each. That's 100 businesses. I just think that just has a perfectness to it.
And would you propose LEAP to administer that then?
Yes. I guess that's a proposal if you.
I could support that as well if that gets consensus from people.
Yeah, I would second that.
Can we ask LEAP if they'd be willing to administer that and at what cost?
Yeah, Tom, why don't we invite LEAP to be part of this conversation? If Dylan's mic could be unmuted.
I think he's 069.
Yep.
Yes, he
You guys
is.
hear me? Everybody hear me?
Yep. Yes.
Dylan. Appreciate the conversation. I love all the insight. I just want to first and foremost say we applaud you guys for even taking this into consideration. The creative thinking, both in the near term, midterm, and long term, is just a must-have. And following MEDC guidance and listening to the needs of the small businesses we've communicated with, we are of the mindset that getting grants out is a good way to go. And we are more than happy to facilitate it, being in the position we are with the MEDC and the program before. I think as a potential contractor, we will definitely adhere to what you guys as a board and as a staff define as an impact. We're of the mindset that there has to be a substantial impact right now for our businesses if we want to build the foundation for the rebound in the future. And with that mindset, I mean, there's not everybody will be happy, but with the hopeful
the hopeful approach that we will be able to rebound together if we can make the most impact to the ones that are relatively unique to the community fabric that we have. So we originally talked about that 10% fee in relation to the grant amount, and then in conversations yesterday with Tom, I think we're good to go with 10,000, and perhaps can talk further if we need to up that depending on the grant amount. But I think it's probably okay if it needs to be at $10,000 in order to get this money out the door.
Thank you, Dylan. Do board members have any questions of Dylan or Leap?
Dylan, very quickly, this is Jeff Smith. Just wanted to see if there are a number of companies I know that applied to the LEAP grant that were East Lansing DDA businesses. Is there a way to expedite that process if we know that they were already requesting funds at the time? You know, we're now 2 to 3 weeks past the point of when that application had gone out and when the funds had been dispersed. You know, 2 to 3 more weeks of painfully trying to keep companies alive. Is there a way to expedite that process? We know that there are a portion of East Lansing companies that are on that list.
You kind of cut out a little bit, but I think I got the gist. I'm wondering about focusing on the East Lansing businesses that submitted last time, and devising up a process to make it quicker. Is that what the question was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can do. We have everybody's contact information, email, phone number. They've all been communicated with. There's approximately 175 East Lansing businesses that applied. So the promotional process, which was probably a week previously, I mean, you probably could even cut it down in half with the direct communication that's already been foundationally implemented. But again, this is stuff that we can flexibly talk about in order to make the best impact and the efficiency that we need. I think that's definitely a possibility.
There was some comment, this is Lindsay Clayton again. There was a comment about landlords.
Yeah.
Is there a feeling, I guess, from the board that that landlords aren't businesses we don't want to get grants? I'm perplexed.
Lindsay, is that question directed at me or for the board?
Either one. Did landlords not qualify under your first grant, or?
I can kick it off. They did. They qualified as an eligible business, a small business, and I think one board member kind of hit it on the head. It might have been George, talking about developing the scoring criteria in relation to the impact you want to make. That's how you're going to find where this money lands versus big business target versus a landlord versus a franchise owner versus a sole proprietor, et cetera. So they were eligible originally. Just about everybody was eligible if they hit number of employees and needed a working capital grant, and a couple other pain points. But in the original one, they were accepted, and then just in the scoring criteria, that's how you analyze it further.
Yeah, Lindsay, this is Jim Kroom. I raised it in conjunction with a comment from Jeff about professional. It's more of a query. Do they need it? So it goes more to the scoring and to the need. I'm not trying to exclude anybody that's in need. I'm not trying to exclude anybody in need, but it was more of a query. Do they need it, or do other small businesses need it more?
Okay, and personally, I would like to see them included in this if we choose to move forward, because I think that we have a lot of small businesses in this town who are based in that industry, and I think they should be included.
The question I would ask about landlords is,
do we feel that landlords have had a hit to their business? Are they giving rent discounts or not getting rent paid to them? And that's, I guess, the question I would have. And that's something I'm not sure of. If people are still.
George,
Yes.
Greg Ballline. Speaking as a landlord in this community, probably 30% of my tenants have paid me during this time frame. I don't have any hope that any of them are going to pay me throughout the summer, even if they do open for business. There is no doubt that it's felt across the board.
Well, that's useful information to have then. Thanks.
No, I mean, it's just, it's not that you're going to put out eviction notices to people. You're going to abate their rent and you're going to take care of them because they're valuable members of our community. It's just the hit across the board to everybody. And that's kind of why I proposed just sending out checks to everybody. It seemed to be the easiest process. I mean, every member of our DDA community paid those taxes. I think having a select and choose type process is just going to lead to the same thing that happened with the LEAP grants, that people are going to feel excluded and feel like they should have gotten those monies. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, so I'm a very small landlord and I've got 100% payment as of April 1. I don't know what May 1 will look like. I've had maybe 10% of the folks write and ask for rent abatements and so on. But I would not take the money as a landlord. Whatever the amount turns out to be, it's not going to materially affect the landlord business. So landlords are affected, yes, and I will be, but I would be uncomfortable taking the money, and whatever it turns out to be would not materially help or hurt me.
But, okay, this is Lindsay Clayton again. I appreciate that because we are also a landlord, but that's not our primary business. And for those people who that is their primary business and they have families to feed, I think we need to take them into account.
I think they can be taken into account as a part of the whole application process. If what Jill suggested and people support 100 businesses, $2,500 each with LEAP administering it, they'll be a part of the process too then. And they can make that case, right?
Yeah.
I have a general question as if we were to move forward with this program with LEAP administering the resources, what way does the DDA have to evaluate the performance of the program down the road?
Hey, Peter, that's a great question. This is Dylan. We created reporting requirements that needed to be adhered to as part of the grant agreement, and we were thinking in the scope of work that was presented to you, monthly reports to the DDA, coinciding with your regular meetings, as to the applications, the awardees, timelines, the working capital uses, et cetera, all the way up to a 6-month period where we anticipate, hopefully, that the world turns right side up again. So that's the process that we're utilizing right now. The city of Lansing is doing something similar as well, and we think it's not too burdensome, but still demonstrates where these dollars are going to, when, and what impact they have in the end. Whether they bring back employees, add a few part-times, can cover a couple months of rent, et cetera.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other comments or
questions?
So did
approval? Can I make a motion?
Did someone have a motion? Was it Jill? Was that a motion, or?
Can I make a motion, or if someone wants to make it? Jill, did you want to make that a motion?
Well, I think
Feel free, George.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think Jill proposed the conceptual idea. So Jill, if you'd like to make the motion, that probably would be appropriate.
I propose that we contract with LEAP to award $2,500 grants for a total amount of $250,000. using the criteria that's been presented to us.
Second. George.
So it's been moved by Jill, supported by George, to increase the amount to $250,000 to be administered by LEAP for a small business relief fund. Any further comment on the motion?
Peter, can I chime in for a little bit?
Yes.
Peter, this time, Jaden. I'm just concerned that the $10,000 fee that LEAP had charged was for a limited number of grants, and I think we want to make sure that the fee stays the same, or that it's agreed to by the DDA. So I think the fee needs to be put in the motion so it doesn't become an issue later.
Okay.
I thought I heard that Dylan said that he would accept that LEAP would do it for the $10,000. Maybe I was wrong about that.
For a
I just
fee
wasn't
of
that clear on
$10,000.
that.
Okay, I'll amend my proposal for a fee to LEAP of $10,000.
Thank you.
So we will, a friendly amendment to Jill's original motion for the fee that has been established by LEAP to do the work. Any
Peter,
further discussion?
Peter,
Yes?
I don't know if you can see, but Michael and Tom Fehrenbach have their hands up.
I'm sorry. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Mike. I just have I guess a question and or a comment with regards to voting on this motion. When it comes to those of us who obviously represent small businesses within this district, right now, are we going to be affected either positively or negatively in any sort of way based on how we decide to vote on this specific request right now?
It's an excellent question, Michael. Tom, can you speak to that, Tom Yaden?
I mean, I guess
I
the
don't know
question
that the
would
question was to me. I think it's to LEAP.
No, it's probably more. It's probably
voted.
more for LEAP and or for Jeff Smith, you know, anecdotally, or you know, whomever like can speak to it, because I just want to make sure that regardless, you know, and I don't know whether or not that had any effect, you know, things like this had any effect on previous rounds of applications or anything, you know, of that nature. But it's just sort of a question that I want to make sure that we're not, you know, either needing to pull ourselves out of this, or you know, shooting ourselves in the foot by doing something one way or another.
So Dylan,
I can
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff. All right, let me kick it off here. I appreciate that point. It was one of the most, let's just say, discussed topics during our grant program creation, the conflicts of interest. And as kind of Jeff alluded to earlier, the removal of that and complete separation from even if you vote yes or no on this is totally irrelevant as to how the application for either your business or someone you know professionally or personally, it's totally irrelevant through a two-staged review process with pairs of eyes on each application by committees formulated through the recommendations of either you as the board or the staff. Then with the ultimate decision, you know, coming from a second stage review team that is determined by you guys. So we took probably about 18 hours after we received about 1,800 applications, about a day and a half removing all conflicts of interest and making sure that we have scoring bias mitigated and you know, completely free and objective review process. So in a long-winded, you know, answer, your vote will not deter or advance any scoring to the application.
Michael, the conflict of interest window opens up at the review stage. The reviewers are asked to identify businesses or individuals that they feel there's a conflict of interest with, and those are then removed from the reviewers list, and other reviewers will have them in their queue instead.
Got it.
Correct. And we went with about
because it was such a high volume of applications, or around 1,800, we had 30 reviewers. So that was 15 teams of 2 reviewing, subsets of applications. Some people's scores are, some people's 8s or other people's 5s. So it's important to average them together to kind of get that top percentile. And that would, depending on the number of reviewers you guys would feel comfortable with, it obviously depends on the influx of applications, but probably just say, 8 or so. It'd be a doable process in an efficient way.
Tom, you had a hand up.
Yes, I just had a couple questions for Dylan. One is, are you comfortable with that fee? Is that something you can agree to on behalf of LEAP, or do we need to somehow run that up the chain with you? And then the other is, if the DDA decides to move forward with this, how would you suggest to best engage either the DDA or a subset of the DDA in creating the processes?
Yeah, I appreciate asking about the fee. I would feel more comfortable running it up the chain, but based on our previous conversations, and I understand the timeline, if that's not permitted, maybe if that can't be delegated to staff conversations with us as the contractor, I understand. But I don't see it either way moving too vastly. Maybe there's a middle number, in there. But so I'll throw that out there. That would be appreciated. So understand if not, able to do that. The second one, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure how your DDA board operates in task force or anything like that, but would recommend at least 3 or 4 dedicated individuals to work with staff on picking up the eligibility. So the most of the workload is in the 2 to 3 days before the application goes live, and that's where it's at least last time it was essentially day and night, ironing out the wrinkles so that we can have a smooth process. So I will defer to you, but I would recommend at least task force to operate with staff and with LEAP, LEAP as in staff, and of course the tech personnel, the website people are going to be crucial when it comes to. But again, we'll defer.
So this is Lindsay Clayton again. I have a question for staff. How does that look for the DDA as a whole then? I mean, if we approve this, then we have, who are we authorizing to do the criteria?
And if I could pipe in here for a second, Lindsay.
Yep.
This is Tom Yaden. I've got some general OMA concerns about just delegating these types of decisions to staff. So I know logistically the DDA probably doesn't want to have another meeting in the near future regarding this, but it may have to give a final stamp of approval to whatever staff comes up with.
Thank you. That is exactly what I was thinking.
Well, we have our original motion from Jill that's been supported by George, which has been amended. Before we act on that motion, I want to, I guess, ask a question of staff of how this is going to relate to the other items that you've presented, Tom, as far as the permits and licensing fees. Would we make that party to this same motion? And then the conversation about a gift card program, does that now make that no longer an option?
Well, this would effectively direct $250,000 of the 324 that are available.
Right.
So I think it's appropriate to do this as a separate motion. And then you would have, the bucket of 74,000 approximately that would be remaining for any other programs that you want to do.
Okay. Do any other DDA board members have an opinion before we take action on this motion relative to the other ideas that were submitted?
Well, Peter, this is Jim Groom. I think that we can still consider the second option after we're done with this and decide
Okay.
if there's an appetite or not.
So this is Lindsay Clayton. The motion at hand, I think we need to outline in that motion the following steps that we're going to take for how we're going to meet to deal with the criteria component, or am I wrong on that?
I believe that's a question to staff.
I think that can be addressed in a separate motion, but I would defer to Mr. Yaden on that. The other thought that I have is you are amending your project development fund, so you may need to incorporate that language in terms of what you're taking the monies away from into the motion as well.
I'll amend my proposal to say, and the city manager's office is authorized to make any budget adjustments necessary.
Just out of curiosity, doesn't the council, if we make the motion to amend our budget, we still have to have city council actually finalize that, correct?
Which means if he did,
I don't
think so, though.
No, I don't think so, because the line item that you're taking these funds out of has not changed. You are redirecting your own project development fund. Heather, do I have that correct?
$2,000.
That's correct. That's correct.
We're not spending more money than we're authorized to.
Correct. You're just reallocating money within your budget for a different activity.
That's a lot.
So in response to Lindsay's question, and I think what you're suggesting, Tom, is that we make the determination of whether or not we're reallocating money from our project development fund from our own budget, and then take a separate motion to talk in terms of how it would be, the criteria by which it would be allocated as administered by LEAP. Is that a second motion?
Yes, although I think if you desire that we return to the DDA board with our recommendations for that, that could also be appropriate as part of this motion. Could go either way.
George, I think you're muted if you're trying to talk.
No, he's not.
I don't hear George.
Yeah, you're not muted though.
Maybe it might be the headphones, but
Yeah. I think you should unplug your headphones, George. That happens to me too. It confuses your computer.
Now he's muted.
Wait.
I read in the New York Times, this is a way to get out of meetings when people cleverly do this out of.
Can you hear me?
Just
We can hear you.
Go ahead, George.
Okay, I just said, can we just add to the motion that staff will develop a criteria and return for final approval to the DDA?
I think that's good. I'll second that.
So
Then
it's
you
one
have to have
motion.
it. Then you have to have another meeting before you can get this money going.
Yeah, it sounds like that's not gonna, we're not gonna be able to avoid that, and just have a quick meeting to approve this one item next week sometime, or I don't know.
I would support that.
I think we should take the time now and discuss the criteria, as opposed to the sense of urgency of getting money out the door is on our doorstep. And so let's address that instead of having to go through another scheduling of meetings. That would be my opinion.
Luke Hackney here. If we're still talking about this, I guess I'm most curious about maybe talking to LEAP a little bit more about the process, how long they think it'll take, what sort of manpower they actually anticipate, who will be the people that are deciding this. Somebody like Jeff involved in this as he was the last one. These are all questions I have. I feel like we are all just assuming that LEAP can do this job effectively without any real proof of it, other than the fact that they've done it once and have come to us, or we've come to them, and now they're offering a proposal for us to have them do it. I don't think that's enough qualification to just hand them money without more information.
Well, if we're getting,
I think that city staff has reviewed, I think city staff consulted with LEAP and is familiar with LEAP, and we're basing our recommendation and vote on what city staff has researched.
and if we're giving them the criteria, if we're saying we're giving them the criteria, then they're going to do it along the lines that we say to the businesses that we've outlined. I mean, to the district we outlined. So we're basically just going to give them the information to use, right?
Correct. This is Dylan. Ultimate decision making is not at LEAP. It's going to be with you guys. You know, I appreciate your comments, Luke. I will counter though. Now it's the third time we'd be doing it, and we have received word from MEDC that it's one of the best processes across the state in terms of thoroughness and transparency and objectivity. So I appreciate your caution. I am more than willing to talk further and iron out the details whenever that should happen. But we will stand by our approach here, and we do think it's important to follow the process that we've had in place for the reasons that were stated in the scope of work.
Okay, thank you for that, Dylan. Dylan, I did have one other quick question. How many of the original 60 grants, just out of curiosity, how many of those went to East Lansing businesses in general? Do you know?
Yeah, we actually broke it out pretty in depth. So there was 173 applications from the city of East Lansing. We didn't break it out by DDA. Of those 173, I have it up here. 6 were awarded. I don't have them off the top of my head, but that's about like a 3.5% success rate, which is about a full percent above the rest of the region. In addition, if you go by population, East Lansing's population, 46,000, 7,000-ish, is about 10% of the region, and 6 is obviously 10% of 60. So naturally, it did work out to be, pretty proportional, just by the process.
Okay, thank you.
Because how should we set up this vote? Should we just vote on what we have and then do a separate criteria vote?
Tom.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Did you get do you have in your mind some draft criteria, or have you done any work on this? I assume you have.
Yes, I mean, I think it's fairly similar to what's the example eligibility, so that we get support to businesses, for instance, that have 50 employees or less, that can demonstrate some kind of loss of income specific to the pandemic, and their need for working capital, and what they would be using those funds for. So I mean, I think it's fairly similar. We may want to make some tweaks just based on, the makeup of DDA companies, and really some of these areas are arbitrary in the sense that, is 50 the right number? And that's where we would look to the DDA board to help us sort of understand, how to set some of those criteria.
For doing this criteria, can we get a kind of breakdown of some of our downtown businesses to see the actual data on, how many business exactly do we have? How many fall in the 1 to 25 employees or 50 to 100? I would like to see some actual numbers.
If I can chime in, this is Dylan. I appreciate that sentiment again, but I will go back to kind of a theme that we relied on. I think Jeff's talked about it, and another board member as well. It's really not about scoping them out of eligibility up front, but more so how they were viewed and the impact that this grant would have in the scoring criteria. So one score might value a business with 40 employees. One score might value one with 5, and that's where the impact is determined, rather than upfront and excluding somebody just because we have 26 employees versus 25. Small business definition is very fluid, and you want to narrow it down as you review it, rather than maybe a gatekeeper approach.
I know we don't want to have another meeting, but I would propose that we get like 2 board members to sit down with Tom and just get this out and bring it back for a recommendation early next week, and we have a quick vote.
I'll second that.
Agreed.
I'll second that.
I also think that maybe we shouldn't come on the right. I don't have a problem doing a second meeting, and I am a little concerned with that being the perception. I think that we need to, those of us that are on this really care about our downtown, and if we have to have a second meeting, that's not a problem.
Well, no one's worried about a second meeting, I don't think, because we don't want to take the time. It's just the delay is what people are worried about, right? No one is saying it's not important enough. We're just saying that it's the urgency of getting the money out is the reason the second meeting is a concern. So.
Yep, the delay is, this is the mayor, that's my issue, it's just the delay. I'd like to get this going as soon as we can.
But if we do it on Monday or Tuesday, I mean, if they can get together tomorrow or Monday, we can do this Monday or Tuesday. I just don't see that. I think it's worth it to
So
get
there's
it
a
right.
2-day, 18-hour posting or whatever it is, the 20-hour posting requirement for the meeting. So once we have stuff ready, we'd have to do a posting and then look for availability and then post the meeting.
Okay.
Well, let's call the question, vote on the first part. And then,
I second Lindsay's request to call the question, and that's not debatable. So we need to vote on whether we're calling the question.
All right, we're gonna proceed with the original request, motion by Jill that's been amended. And can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Can we read back what that original motion was?
thank you.
Just a point of order. I think we're actually voting on the call of the question.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
If we're ready
That's
to vote,
correct. That's correct. We have to vote on the call.
oh, geez. If we're ready to vote, can't we just vote on the item?
I'll
No,
withdraw my
no.
call question. It's fine. I just want to get this moving.
I know, me too.
Okay, I'll withdraw my second.
the whole thing.
Peter, I'm not sure if you're talking. You are on mute if you needed to.
Who has the motion? Tom, do you have the motion? Can you read it back?
So I believe it's to modify the project development fund by reallocating $250,000, which would be allocated by LEAP in $2,500 increments to 100 businesses, and authorizing a $10,000 fee to LEAP for administrative costs. Does that sound right?
Very good.
We would bring the criteria back for final approval.
And return to
George,
staff.
what was that?
Go ahead,
So he's saying to add to that and have staff work with appointees from the DDA to return with proposal criteria to the DDA next week.
Okay, everyone understand the motion that's before us? It's a roll call vote, so Chad, if you could call the roll.
Wait, Peter?
Yeah.
Should we say that the chair will appoint 2 members to work on this, so we don't have to go through who goes and all this, and then you can just appoint 2 members?
let's say we'll appoint 3 members.
Okay,
Is that acceptable?
by me. Great.
Okay,
I
great.
just want us to know how we figure out who to pick. That's all.
Doesn't Leap, just a question for Leap, don't they have, didn't he say that he usually has some people from the board on their review process too?
So I think an important clarification is that I think maybe I misheard in the actual motion, but Leaf would not be the one deciding where the money goes. It would be you guys or whoever you designate as the selection committee. In terms of the eligibility, in the previous program we did that, I mean, you develop that in-house, and in-house would be following the guidelines developed by you or your task force and then voted upon you. So I think that's the proper process, and I agree that 3 is probably the number to go with from the board.
Thank you.
Okay. So Chad, if you could call the roll on the
Hey,
vote. On
Peter,
this.
Peter, before we call the vote, can I just
Yes.
make a comment before we vote, if that's okay?
Yes, please.
Listen, I know we want to get this money out there, and we got to get this money back to the businesses that are hurting. I understand that completely. I hate being involved in a process that discriminates. And I think when you pick and choose who's going to get grants and who's not going to get grants, there's a lot more than 100 businesses that are hurting here in East Lansing. And I'm not saying I have a better solution to the problem. Trust me, okay? I balk at that. I'm going to vote in favor of this because it needs to move forward. But it's something I have severe reservations about, okay?
Fair enough. Any other comments before we vote on this motion?
Jeff Smith, one more.
Yes.
I don't think agreeing to this precludes us from doing a second round or finding a way that all companies in the DDA, to that matter, all companies in our city, have access to something that will help them through this. This is a way for funds to reach the doorstep of companies. It's unfortunately a bit of a lottery, but it is a more than random choice and selection of who gets what. This is reviewed by several rounds and several hands and several eyes, and hopefully the criteria process and the process by which the funds go out are vetted and respectful of all of those decisions. So in my mind, I don't see this as the end.
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Okay, we're going to proceed with the roll call vote. Chad, if you could call the roll.
Okay, Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Nope.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Passes 9-1.
Okay, so we will set up a committee and then look at make that task force or committee will make recommendations to the full DDA on our criteria process. And that will have to happen after this meeting as far as the selection of those individuals. We'll move on to the other recommendations from staff as it relates to both the proposed gift card program and or the fees that are impacting some of the restaurants. Tom, do you want to go back and revisit those items?
Sure. So essentially, there are an expected about $70,000 in fees for companies that need a restaurant license, liquor license, entertainment permit, etc. And the DDA can choose to offset a portion of those or make a request to the city council to offset or delay or defer or forbear a portion or some combination of those two things.
Peter, this is Jim Kroom.
Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Tom. Could we possibly hear from Tom or other staff or George on this fee reduction and just thoughts from the quote unquote city standpoint before we all start debating? Because I would like to get money to the businesses and this is a way, and I assume council makes this decision, but we would be making a recommendation.
Yes. George, do you want to weigh in?
Yes, so the thought was to not have businesses, can people hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So the thought was to not have people get a bill. We would be sending our bill out now in April. Actually, we probably would have sent it out already, which would be the restaurant and entertainment license bill. It would probably be somewhere between, they vary tremendously. If you're a small establishment, it's a $500 bill or a $600 bill, which is a common number somewhere in that range. But if you're a very, very large establishment, it could be $10,000 or more if you have very high occupancy. So our thought was to make it where most of the businesses would not have to pay anything. So we thought something I'll be recommending to council next week is a $2,000 reduction to that bill. So many businesses will pay zero. They won't get a credit. They won't get money back. If their bill was $500, they would not pay anything this year for their bill. Now, this is the bill that's due July 1. I think it actually comes in, it has to be paid by like June 15th, but it's effective July 1. So basically the idea was to not hit our downtown businesses with a restaurant bill, or at least to offset it for most of them. The number $2,000 was looking at the number of businesses we have, how much, how many most of them pay, to try to get it to be close to zero or zero for most of them. But again, council hasn't discussed this. They will consider this next week and decide if they want to accept it, change it, do something different. But that was the logic of it.
Thanks. Was part of the suggestion a delay or for a few months for those who would have to pay it?
No, what we did was we simply didn't send the building out in April to give us enough time to get to council to give the recommendation. So that was the delay. We didn't send the bill out on time because, well, first of all, people aren't in the office. But second of all, we wanted to make sure that we had time to go to council and ask them if they wanted to do this reduction.
George, this is citywide, not just downtown, right?
Correct. It would be all businesses, all restaurant businesses that have a business license for a restaurant and or a combination of an entertainment license.
Are there questions of George or of Tom? So
I would like to, I guess, if there's no discussion, I would like to move that we support that the DD support Peter issuing a letter indicating the DDA support for George's concepts.
I do have one question. So these are licenses that are due in the summer. What about like coffee shops that have outdoor seating and things like that? I think you're muted.
George?
You're muted.
There you go, thanks. This would be any place, an ice cream shop, a coffee shop, big or small, but I don't know if I did not make a recommendation on the outdoor license fee. It's a very nominal fee, but I didn't offer that as a part of this. This was just thinking about the business license and entertainment license.
Okay, well, if we're gonna do entertainment licenses, I would like to see the outdoor seating. I think that we need to be encouraging people to be outside in the summer, especially if we open slowly and things like that. So I would, if that's possible, you know, I would like to vote on this, but I would like us to consider the outdoor seating license as well.
Heather, do you have any sense of the scope of the outdoor seating permits in the DDA?
As far as how many have come in this year or expecting?
Yeah, how many are typical?
About a half dozen are typical. They're pretty minimal. There's an application fee and then it's $50 per chair. A lot of the businesses just have a couple of tables and chairs coming out. I know that Jolly Pumpkin and Barrio are both applying for right of way. Those will be coming through. And I think we've had one or two others that have already applied and paid their fee, but that's always seen. And if they've applied before and they've never had issues, it doesn't come back to the DDA. So, but the fees are pretty minimal on some of those.
Well, if you want to make that a part of the recommendation, we can certainly mention that to council and council can consider it when we discuss this issue. We just didn't look at that item. We looked at the original business license and entertainment license.
I'd like that because it encourages people to use outdoor seating when we need it the most.
I think Lindsay brings up a great point. Are there other licenses or permits that we haven't contemplated outside of the outdoor licenses?
This is Mayor Byer. What we were doing is trying to get something that was simple that we could do right away, not just change behavior, but to compensate companies and the small businesses and the restaurants because they need it right away.
Yeah.
At some point, we actually do have to also collect revenue. So I wouldn't want to look at just forgiving everything. But again, council will talk about this, and if they want to do it more broadly, they will. If they don't want to do it at all, they mean we won't. But I can't see that happening.
And I don't think we should eliminate people having to pay for their licenses, but I think we should be encouraging outdoor use right now. I think that it is a public health issue that and if we can support that in any way and support maybe new businesses moving that way, if they need to right now, I think we need to do that.
And I agree. And this 70,000, it's, I hate to use the word de minimis in the city budget because it's so tight, but it does, we do all recognize it means a lot more to the businesses now. And it is a benefit to our community as a whole to have these vibrant, or to potentially have these businesses continue.
So
the motion is just to recommend the program that we're recommending, but also look at the addition of the outdoor license, waiving the license fee as well, is what the motion was. Is that I can't think of any other license fee that would apply at this time, but that's all I can come up with. Tom, unless you have something else, I can't think of anything else offhand.
I can't either, but we'll continue to scour for any other fees like that could potentially be offset.
Super, I'll make that my motion.
I'll second your motion. I don't know who else said support, but
Luke.
So Jim's motion has been offered and supported by Luke. Sounds like we've debated this at great length. If there's any other comments, offer them now. If not, we'll go ahead.
I've got one quick comment.
Yes.
This is Mike. Just wanted to make it clear to the rest of the DDA that the Responsible Hospitality Council did send a letter to Mayor Byer, and I believe the DDA was CC'd on it as well, asking for a similar type of forgiveness for all the restaurant and entertainment licenses. So just FYI.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, Chad, if you could call the roll on voting on Jim's motion.
Absolutely. Ballline?
Yes.
Mayor Byer?
Yes.
Clayton?
Yes.
Kroom?
Yes.
Dewan?
Yes.
Hackney?
Yes.
Kruger?
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
This passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the final component then, Tom, are there resources still available to contemplate a gift card program, or what is the appropriate action for the DDA to take on that item?
So according to my calculations, you still have approximately $74,000 of the project development fund that you could reallocate to any additional programs that you so desire.
Well, I would like to take an additional approach of pursuing that option. And again, I don't know how it will be completely implemented, but other than the DDA absorbing the expense of a gift card program, that at a later time, we will likely sell the cards through some approach. Maybe it's a possibility of incorporating some of the ideas that came from the neighborhood association of trying to leveraging purchasing power. But nonetheless, that would be able to be monies available that could go directly in the hand of business owners presently to help sustain them during these difficult days. So I invite any comments or suggestions or questions on that approach. Any thoughts?
This is Luke. A couple, I guess the first one is just that I looked over the costs and I don't think they're accurate in that letter, which I do appreciate. And I love her. I'm speaking about the neighborhood association letter. I love their enthusiasm. I love their initiative. I don't think those costs are accurate. If anything, I would think that actually is something that would cost about $10,000. From my understanding of infrastructure, of websites, and how complicated they would be to yield to individual businesses, especially, and how that would be administered in the long run. I think that's a very complicated process.
An e-commerce platform like this is going to be pretty expensive.
I can't think of one business in town that has probably spent the sort of money that would facilitate something like this. I mean, this is something most business owners would probably say is too expensive.
So Peter, again, we have more work to do to flesh this program out, but if you do desire to move forward with this type of a program, perhaps it would be appropriate to determine the amount and then have staff return with the framework as soon as possible.
Sure.
I'm in favor of that.
Well, I offer the motion to allocate the resources that are remaining towards a gift card program with ask for a second and details to emerge at a later time. And Luke, are you seconding that motion?
No, I not without more details that it's something that I would even want to support in the future. No.
Okay. Is there support for the motion of allocating those resources to some type of gift card program?
Maybe somebody should bring back the program and then we can talk about putting resources toward it.
Tom, can you go back and revisit that item?
Certainly. So there's in your packet is a draft of a program that goes into some detail in terms of one potential framework you could undertake. Essentially, the bottom line is the DDA would create a fund and some policy and process for restaurants to apply for the DDA to purchase gift cards directly from them. Presumably there'd be some cap of what each business was able to apply for. The DDA would enter into agreement to purchase those gift cards and hold them for some amount of time until they were able to be redeemed. And in that time, we would build up an e-commerce platform to essentially resell the gift cards over time to the general public. So the gift cards would potentially be redeemed then at that later time, and the companies would need to provide products or services as sort of the payback of the funds that the DDA would use to pay for those gift cards. And the monies that were used by the public to purchase those cards from the DDA would then replenish that fund. Obviously, the risks are if the gift cards are not sold or if the businesses are not able to redeem them after the date because either they've gone out of business or some other reason. So that's essentially it. There's also the concept that potentially there'd be some sort of incentive for the public to purchase them, either as sort of a philanthropic effort or that the businesses would be willing to provide some sort of incentive, like if you buy $10 worth of cards, you get $15 worth of value. So that's the basic framework of it, but again, definitely needs more investigation.
But why would we have to front any money? Why couldn't we just do this? People would be encouraged to go out and help and buy these cards, and then we'd use that money to do the grant. I don't understand this loan part. Why wouldn't we just do the second half, start selling these cards?
I think the idea,
we could certainly do
Mike. Sorry, Tom, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the idea would be for the DDA to purchase the cards from the businesses ahead of time so that way they could have the cash in hand. And then the DDA would then go back and sell the gift cards afterwards, essentially, right? Is that my understanding?
That's correct. I mean, the thesis was to get cash into the hands of businesses as quickly as possible.
Right.
But why couldn't we make a generic downtown gift card that's good anywhere and encourage people to start buying them? I mean, I would think everybody would do that to help right away.
We tried that for years with the downtown management board, and it was a pretty much absolute
failure is what I would constitute it.
That was back in 2015, correct?
15, I'd probably officially died in 2016.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Can you, Michael or Luke, can you speak to why that was unsuccessful?
I mean,
probably from a marketing standpoint. I mean, just being able to have the funds in order to get enough people to know that it was out there in the first place. But then also, I think just, I don't know, the overgenerality of being able to have a program like this and administer it properly without having it cost a ridiculous amount of money is just, I don't know. It wasn't within the DMB budget, that's for sure.
It does cost a lot of money to find one gift card that's universal amongst a variety of places.
Right.
I think the other thought, though, is that if you have a universal gift card, you don't know who to give the money to in the downtown. The other way is if people want to sell, like I'm trying to understand the process, Tom, so maybe correct me, but if business A says, I'll sell $2,000 worth of gift cards, we get to put $2,000 in their hands, right? Or is how can you maybe go through that part of it of how the gets to their hands quicker?
If I could maybe jump in, and then Tom, you could maybe give the explanation, but I know when our children were in school, we had the script program through the school, right? So you would go there on every Wednesday, you could buy Speedway gift cards, you could buy gift cards for a variety of different businesses in town, Kroger, a number of other businesses. And any business that had a gift card program could participate. And as a family, we thought, well, we're going to buy groceries regardless. We're going to buy gas regardless. Why not go through the school? And the school receives a minor percentage back of cards sold. And it was just kind of a mass purchasing program, script program. And essentially that's what we're doing in the community. We're trying to get money in the hands of business owners now because cash flow is an issue. And this may help sustain them during the time period that until we can resume normal activities. So that was principally the idea of how do we quickly get money in the hands of business owners to help pay the utilities and the operational expenses that don't go away, the rent, just to keep the doors open. And then at some point down the road, they can be redeemed. The cards can be redeemed for the product or service that's available. So that's generally the idea.
Peter, this is Jim Kroom.
Yes.
So I'm trying to think about this, and it didn't work at the DMB level. It's costly. We do want to get money in the hands of businesses immediately, but then I guess one benefit of this is maybe on the tail end, it gets people into the businesses, but I balance that against the need for money now and would prefer programs that put money directly in the pocket of businesses now and that can be administered effectively and that work. And I don't know that hearing from the merchants that this is necessarily feasible. Maybe we could save this money for a phase 2 of something or other if the LEAP program goes well.
How much, this is Jeff, how much is in, are we talking about 72, 73,000 is left in the project development fund?
Right.
70,
okay.
Yeah.
Do we have 70 some companies in the DDA that can sell gift cards right now? I would bet we do. I mean, Mike and Luke, you could both sell gift cards right now, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
So why don't we just buy gift cards from the companies in the DDA that can sell gift cards up to $1,000, and then we have $72,000 worth of gift cards sitting at City Hall, waiting to be deployed at some point.
That's what we're proposing.
Yeah, we don't have to come up with an e-commerce platform. We don't have to come up with a standardization. We just buy them now and distribute them later.
Exactly.
Mike and
This is
Luke,
Tom here.
Mike and Luke, does that take care of like what the concerns were?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to a degree, I mean, you're talking about just buying anybody that has the ability to buy gift cards, just buying their gift cards in an equally distributed fashion. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
But then with a gift card, what's the economic analysis? With the gift card, you still have to eventually give product to that person. Wouldn't a direct grant be more powerful?
I agree, yeah.
Or how about some marketing where we beg people to go buy gift cards for people? I mean, that may be the best use of the money. Take $10,000 and just blitz marketing and tell everyone, go downtown and start buying gift cards.
So I was listening to something on NPR recently, and it was all about this whole gift card phase. And it was, there was a restaurant owner who was talking about how they need money right now. They don't need people buying gift cards, because then when they really do come back online and they really do need customers as well, then you're pulling out at a vital time for that second phase of recovery for restaurant and service industries. So I don't own a restaurant, although I do own a service business. And it makes sense to me when I listen to this. Can we have some of our restaurant owners or other business owners comment on this? Because I just don't think that this is the best way to utilize money and set people up for long-term success.
I can chime in a little bit there. Sorry, this is Mike. I spoke a little bit with Peter about this the other day when he asked me about the idea of a gift card program for the neighborhood association. And you're right, Lindsay, and the whoever you were listening to on NPR is correct in that, you know, it's nice to have some cash up front right now, but ultimately those are all going to get used at some point. And more than likely, you know, as soon as we are able to reopen or whatever that's going to mean. And so then when we're actually trying to get more revenue coming in at that point, you know, it's not going to be, because those gift cards will all be getting used as well. And so it's great, and I'm not advocating necessarily not supporting it, but there's just, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
So at the DMB meeting, one of the motions, I'm just reading from the summary, just to give a concept of what some business people are thinking, the DMB discussed, among other things, the fact that staff should receive some quotations on webinar training opportunities for downtown East Lansing businesses to receive helpful hints on how businesses can encourage and promote patrons to support their businesses as soon as they are reopened. The DMB feels that pursuing a major marketing undertaking is not the best use of resources at this time anyway. Instead, the majority of board members felt that offering financial resources would be of greater benefit to the businesses. So I just throw that out there.
You know, just a quick thought. We spent $250,000 to get out to businesses quickly, which I think is a great idea. Council is hopefully going to allocate about 50,000 or more to business license reduction next week. Hopefully, I think they'll consider that strongly. And maybe saving some of this money, $75,000, like we're all sort of saying, to keep some thought for next month, 2 months from now, if there's a second round, if there's something else we want to do, to be able to focus on that rather than spend it all on the first day. You know, we just are hopefully allocating $300,000 of support right now between this and the business licenses. Maybe wait on the 75,000. Go ahead.
Just want to clarify that the number is actually 64 approximately, because we have to factor in the $10,000 fee as well.
64. Why don't we just wait on the 64 and figure out if that's for marketing? Maybe it is buying gift cards in the future. I'm not opposed to that, but maybe it's for marketing, for assisting the parking system with free parking for a duration. That was something that the RHC asked for. Obviously we're doing that now, but maybe there's something we want to save that money for and hold off.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Free parking all summer long might be a better use of the money than this gift card program for the businesses.
I would also agree with that. And I think we need to look at the PPP and other grants, and when, because the PPP only goes until what, July? So we need to look at when we do things, like if we were to do this gift card
8 weeks period.
Pardon?
Sorry, it only goes for 8 weeks period, regardless. Yeah.
So,
but anyway, yeah.
So if people get the PPP and then we were to do this, something like this gift card, then we're really hitting them at this really difficult time. I personally would only be willing to support a second item that looks at kind of the second or third phases of this. If we're looking at it, at 3-month increments or 12, or 8-week increments.
Are there other comments? A lot of really great ideas, and trying to go ahead. Is that Jeff?
I was just going to ask Luke, what would you recommend? What would be the most beneficial from your perspective, Luke and Mike?
With the money remaining?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't sell gift cards for all the reasons that you guys are discussing, because I don't think it's a long-term, solution to my problems, and I don't want to have to, especially somebody like me it's all commodity based. I mean, actually I'm doing fine because I'm not buying t-shirts and I'm not spending money on labor. Those are by far my 2 biggest costs. So I would gift cards I'm so hesitant on offering because of that, because I'm gonna have to buy all the necessary things that would have to accrue to redeem those things. I honestly have no idea. I mean, that's such a drop in the bucket now, and it goes against the now that the rest of that money is gone, I guess I would rather just sit on this and see if something better comes along.
I would agree with Luke on that, and I think that sitting on it is the way to go at this very moment. And again, I'm not saying whether or not I support the gift card purchase program one way or another, but there are definitely more hangups to it than I think a lot of people probably realize as far as a business owner goes, as far as from a business perspective it goes.
Yeah. I would agree with that we should keep our powder dry.
All right. Doesn't appear, I'll withdraw my motion to support that. And then we can just move on to the next agenda item on our agenda. Item 6C is the consideration of a memorandum of understanding with River Caddis as far as the development for the Evergreen properties. Tom, are you going to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. So as you're aware, the DDA released an RFP for development proposals on the Evergreen properties, which is a little more than an acre at 314 to 344 Evergreen. In January, we received 2 bona fide responses, and the DDA established thereafter a review committee. And we posted both projects to the website and opened up a public comment period and methods for folks to be able to contact us with their thoughts or questions. A joint meeting of the DDA and the review committee was planned as the starting off point for the selection and approval process. Subsequently, 2 things happened. One, Convexity, one of the proposers, withdrew their proposal, leaving one active proposal, the River Caddis development proposal known as Sudol. The second thing, obviously, is that the COVID-19 and the response necessitated not only the meeting cancellations, but disrupted our entire process. It's also created, obviously, a lot of uncertainties about the future, about what type of development program may ultimately make the most sense and be feasible. So staff reviewed the proposal, the River Caddis Citadel proposal concept, and it envisions an 8-story building, which would be 112 feet tall. It would be mostly office space, around 250,000 square feet, and then would have an active ground floor usage through a lobby concept that would be open and flexible, and also some space for retail, restaurant, or other ground floor type businesses. Would have about 250 parking spaces and include some public infrastructure improvements. It's a 92-page document. We do have the developers, I think, are still on the call here today if you have questions regarding it. It would require a rezoning to B3, which staff would anticipate would be a request for a conditional rezoning conditioned on the project. In the absence of being able to keep our planned meeting schedule, staff has continued and had several discussions with the developer and also populated a list of preliminary questions that we had or were made aware of, which the developer has responded to in red, and that's in your packet today. Staff and the developer, frankly, were looking for the best way to keep a process going in light of our current situation. And we're both looking for structured feedback from stakeholders that can be incorporated into ultimately a development proposal. I know the developer is looking for a formal nod from the DDA, a formal action, and they're essentially, would like to know officially that the DDA would like to pursue a process towards decisions with them, and that the RFP process has led them to being selected for next steps. I think from the DDA staff perspective, we think there is enough merit in what's proposed to pursue next steps, give them the formality they need to continue discussions with their potential partners, and empower them to engage the stakeholders and pursue their due diligence. So we worked with the developer in drafting the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that's in front of you as a low risk formal action of the DDA to move the process forward. Essentially what it does is gives the developer a 90-day period of exclusivity to perform due diligence, to work with staff and the DDA to develop the agreements that will be necessary and begin their efforts towards a formal application. The DDA would agree within this document to allow access, share documents, and use staff. We'd also agree to establish a project team, which is envisioned as a group of stakeholders, probably similar to the review committee that would meet on some regular basis to discuss the project and also discuss the public-private partnership structure that would be appropriate to move forward. It does limit any remedies to specific performance. The city attorney was deft in adding that section in, and we do recommend approval and authorization of the chair to sign this document. So again, the developers are on the call. I think they're muted. If you have questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Tom, for the background. Can you go ahead and unmute the developers to see if they want to add anything additionally? And then they would be available to answer questions of staff or of DDA members.
Peter, this is Jill. I have to get off at 3, so.
Okay.
I have another meeting.
Sure.
Same.
So, I'm sorry, Nicole, did you unmute or are they still on the line?
John and Kevin
This
are muted.
This is John McGraw, if you guys can hear me.
Hi, John. So
Hi.
question, would you like to add any additional information or background outside of what Tom has provided?
No, I think Tom's done a great job. We're eager to talk about this. I know it's been a long time coming with everything that's been going on the last couple months and starting this process in November and really not hearing much as to feedback to this proposal. So again, eager, encouraged that we're here today. So thanks, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. With that said, amongst the board members, are there questions for staff or for the developer? There, no questions?
Peter, just a point of order. This is Jim Crum. I just want to disclose that I was law partners with Kevin McGraw at Foster Swift. I left Foster Swift in 2002. I believe Kevin left before that. So it's been a good 20 years. I'm also friends with Kevin. I chair the Sparrow Foundation board. Kevin was on that board. He's on many other boards in town because he's very active in philanthropy. But I don't see a reason. I have no financial interest in this proposal whatsoever, or any business interest with Kevin or Caddis. So I'm not going to recuse myself, but I wanted to disclose.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will move to accept the recommendations of staff and proceed with this memorandum of understanding and ask for a second to that motion.
Second, Greg Ballline.
I heard Greg, so seconded by Greg. Any further conversation? See none.
I just have one. Steve, I have one thought, which is if you execute this tomorrow, then the 90-day period would end on the meeting date that it would be our normal meeting date for the DDA board. So I don't know if you want to add that into your recommendation to just execute it tomorrow or thereafter.
Yeah, I'll make a friendly amendment to my own motion of making it effective beginning tomorrow. And I guess, Greg, you would have to support that as well?
Oh, of course. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So
Peter, this is Jim Crum. I have a comment. one of my general comments is that we've been through these rounds of exclusivity before, and I understand there's citizen concern about it. I don't personally share those. I think this is one of the ways that developments need to go forward. They're not going to commit time and resources unless they have these sorts of agreements. We did contemplate previously potential, with respect to legal representation of the DDA, potential conflicts, having the same lawyer represent the DDA and city council or the city. At that past time, I was in favor of having DDA counsel with special expertise in development law represent the DDA, and that by no means would exclude Tom and his firm from continuing to work too. They could work together, but I just feel it's advantageous for the DDA to have a law firm that is very steeped in development law and in negotiating these types of things. That said, I would still potentially vote in favor of this. My thought was I was going to vote no until we got counsel, but I think this can probably go forward. I would just note in paragraph 2, it requires the parties to use best efforts, and that's a fairly high standard. I would propose reasonable efforts. And then in the following paragraph, we're granting them the exclusive right and option. Option's kind of a term of art in real estate. I don't know why we can't strike that and just give them the right to investigate rather than phrase it as an option. And then in the last paragraph, we have lots of protections and that this is not binding and the city can terminate it. DDA rather can terminate it any time. And they can't sue us on our warranties, but there's an attorney fee provision that if there's any litigation, that the prevailing party recovers costs and attorney's fees, and that really inures to the benefit of the other side and not us. So I wouldn't recommend that, but if we could make those 3 changes, I could vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Jim. Are there questions about any of the amendments that Jim has proposed?
Yes, I have.
Yes, Ruth?
Tom, would you like to weigh in on any of those?
I think those are all reasonable changes. I don't know how the other side feels about them, but I don't think that they're certainly reasonable from the DDA standpoint.
Then I'll second those.
Okay, so are we adding that to the, can we add that to the main motion? Or do we have to do that separately?
I would rather have them as an amendment because I still have questions about the main motion.
Okay, so then let's take up the amended changes offered by Jim and supported by Ruth. And Chad, could you take a roll call on that?
Sure. Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
I'm sorry, these are just for the changes?
Yes.
Then yes.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Rhodey, and Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is
So
Joe Rhodey?
I believe she's gone.
Okay.
So the changes have been made. We'll move on to discussion on the main motion. Ruth, you said you had questions?
Yeah, and I guess this is for George and Tom and maybe other Tom. Sometime early on in this, I would like to signal that this is all dependent on that particular development and can't be switched out for a high-rise apartment building. Do we need to do that in this memorandum of understanding, or can we do that later?
So we discussed that
So, I
internally.
think
Tom, did you want to raise it?
Is your concern, Ruth, the 90-day period where they might determine that in that 90-day period that, or is it after that?
Well, I'm talking about ultimately. So and that's why it may not apply here, because they're just investigating, and they may well during the investigation find out that this doesn't work, which is fine. So I just wanted to bring it up to ask you if we had to do anything in this 90-day period or not.
We don't need to do anything unless you're concerned that if they start leaning towards some other type of project in that 90-day period, you want to be able to revoke that exclusivity provision.
How would we do that? How would we tell how they're leaning?
They would have to indicate that to us in some fashion, that there's, I mean, this doesn't bind the DDA or council to anything other than to
Exclusivity.
the exclusivity provision. So that's all it does. So if you think that, as developers have in the past, kind of led with one thing and then switched out a project midway once they got everybody interested in it.
That's exactly what I'm concerned about. So could we do something here where we said they have this exclusivity as long as the information that they're collecting and discussing relates to this particular project?
As long as they continue to pursue the project as presented, or a reasonable facsimile of the project as presented, yes. That language can be added.
I'd like that to offer that as an amendment.
I'll support that, Ruth. So that's another amendment now needs to be added to the main motion. Any further discussion on Ruth's amendment?
Just can you clarify what it is, please?
Yeah.
Yes, Tom, can you read that?
It would go into the exclusivity paragraph that talks about how they have exclusive dealings with us, and we'd want to add it there, and it would say as long as the developer pursues the project as initially presented.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the motion?
Yes, Greg Ballline.
Yeah.
I guess I look at the next 90 days, we got one person to talk to. It's not like we got a bunch of people waiting in the wings, dying to get in here and develop this property. Exclusivity for 90 days is not a big deal, my opinion.
Peter?
Yes.
This is the mayor, and actually exclusivity for 90 days for something that we want is not a big deal. Exclusivity for 30 days for something that the council will never approve is a bad idea. So I think it's a reasonable way to preserve that.
Well, I guess my point, Mayor, was that we don't have any other proposals that have been brought forth during this time frame. We have one proposal in front of us.
Right. And if it's something that we don't want, we will have no proposals until we have proposals. I don't think you're going to have support for city council for something that we don't want, even if that means holding on to the property.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. I understand your point. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think that we're going to get another proposal within the next 90 days in order to allow them to do their due diligence to see if they can do this.
Well, then you'll have no problem voting yes then. Great.
Okay.
Can I,
Go ahead.
as someone who's been through this process so many times and spent so many hours on this, I would really like to have possibly a work session via Zoom with the city council, because I do not want to get into another couple months where the thing that the group that really is the biggest determining factor in this, just at the last minute is like goes back and forth about the height and goes back and forth about the different components not being unique enough. I do not want to waste a ton of time on another project to have council just change their mind back and forth. So that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
All
Luke,
right.
I guess I'm just curious if I'm the only one that is considering the idea that we should reissue another RFP, one that's a wider net and far less restrictions. If anybody recalls, I was, I think, the only one that voted no on this initial RFP, but I'm curious if that is an avenue that anybody else would entertain.
So
I
I'm
would
speaking for
entertain.
myself. I wouldn't entertain it at this point. I think that the developer came forward with what I think is an exciting project. I mean, it's exactly what I would love to see in the downtown. So if I think we just give them the shot to see if it's possible to deliver it, and we give them the 3 months. But I think this is kind of exactly what we want. The fact that there's only one proposal left doesn't, to me, dilute the how exciting of a proposal it is if it can be delivered.
And I agree with that. I don't think, I would not, if I were going to design a proposal as one member of council, it would look a lot like the Caddis proposal.
All right. Are there other comments to the motion? So we have a motion by Ruth, seconded by myself, that this exclusivity remains in place consistent with what has been presented by the developer. And Chad, if you could take the roll call vote on that.
Ballline,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom. Kroom?
He said he might have to leave, remember?
Yeah,
So maybe he left.
Oh, I've got it. No, it's
Oh,
more
here
of a mute issue. Yes, 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 yes.
Okay. Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yeah.
Lahanas,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
All right. The amended motion passes. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none,
Peter, is
Chad?
it
Yeah,
appropriate?
I do have.
I was
Yes.
just going to ask, is
I
it
do have-
appropriate to ask
Sorry.
the developer if they're amenable to the changes?
Yeah, this is Kevin McGraw. Yes, we are. We understand him. We agree with him. John's been the point person on this project, and his energy will get it done consistent with what he's provided. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other further comments?
I did want to revisit. Sorry, this is Mike. Luke's point to that he made of whether or not we actually got this out to all of the right people with the initial RFP. If there was a different way that we could have gone about doing it in order to possibly get more response, or if everybody feels comfortable. And I know city staff may be partial to their opinion that they did do the best job that they possibly could, and I'm not arguing that they did not. But I just want to make sure the rest of our council here is comfortable with the process that took place.
Tom, do you want to speak to that, Tom Fehrenbach?
I think there's always room for improvement in terms of, an effort like this. Was it perfect? No.
Was it broad, and did it reach out to all the contacts that we had available? Certainly. It's a pretty complex piece of property, and development proposal have been historically challenging. So could we have done better? Probably. But do I feel that we got it out broadly? Yes.
Oh, Michael, to respond, this is Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. I think I've already stated it, but unfortunately, I think it was November. As a volunteer member, I was obligated to be out of town with my wife and could not attend the meeting. And that was before the time of Zoom, so there was no remote possibility to vote. But I would have preferred, again, and I was the one that suggested that Van Martin appear and give his viewpoint, but I would have preferred having a professional employed and to have a wider marketing of it. But with that said, I voted in favor, intend to vote in favor of this because I do like this project. I think it's something that I would contemplate is very desirable for that area, given the complexities of development and the sort of limited property area with the block cut in half and so on. So for a lot of reasons, I'm still comfortable with it. We do need to hear more from the developer, obviously, about financial wherewithal and partners and on, the usual stuff. But I'm still happy to go forward despite, how we may have done it differently.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, Chad, I would ask you to go back and call the vote on the main motion as amended.
Okay. Ball line,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton. Is
Yes.
Lynn? Yes.
Sorry.
Thumb up.
You did it. That's why.
No worries. Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
and Hackney,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yeah.
Lahanas,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Okay. Another unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom, is there anything else that we need to address with that item, or can we move on to
There
item
is.
6?
There is one additional thing. So first, just John and Kevin, I'll follow up with you with the changes that were made today in short order. Tom Yaden and I will work on that. The other is this agreement envisions a project team. So I don't know if you want to empower the chair to establish that team, or if you want to have us bring that back to the board.
This would be revisiting with key stakeholders in the community, similar to the task force we had previously.
I think the membership envisioned was similar to the task force, but it's really a project team that would meet regularly to discuss the emerging proposal and the public-private partnership aspects.
Is there any board members that have an opinion on that? Well, seeing none, I presume we operate in that manner, that we will assemble a review team or a committee to work with city staff on advancing forward. Is that acceptable?
So is that the chair then appointing it, or are we bringing it back for consideration?
I'm happy to do whatever the pleasure of the board is. So if the board entrusts me with the responsibility of assembling the group that will be meeting on a routine basis, that's fine, or whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I would say it's easier to have. the
I'm
board
fine with
appoint-
that, Peter.
Board appoint is fine. Chair appointment is fine with me.
I'm fine with that.
I'll second, third, fourth it.
Fine with me. Fine.
Same.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like everyone weighed in. Do we need to take a roll call on that or no?
I'd prefer it personally. Sorry.
All right. Chad, can you go ahead and individually ask every board member their opinion?
Ball line,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. Item 60, Triterra Phase 1 Environmental Assessment Agreement for.
Great. So this is a phase one. This is a phase one environmental site assessment. We are leveraging $270 of DDA funds with a $2,430 LBRC grant. And so we're just looking for approval of $270.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Jim, supported by Lindsay. Chad, can you call the roll, please?
Ball line,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan. Peter, I didn't hear you. Dewan?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hackney,
Yes.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
All right. Very good. Is there any other unfinished business? Seeing
No.
none, we'll move on to any board members' announcements or concerns. Seeing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
I move to adjourn.
Wait. Isn't there something about the Evergreen property leases that we're supposed to be going over?
We crossed
That
that
was-
off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was at the beginning.
So
Okay.
we have a motion to adjourn and it's been supported.
I
Chad,
got
can you take
the motion
roll?
from Smith and second by Dewan.
Yes. Chad, can you go through the roll?
I will. Ball line,
Yes.
Mayor Byer,
Yes.
Clayton,
Yes.
Kroom,
Yes.
Dewan,
Yes.
Hackney,
Yes. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Kruger,
Yes.
Lahanas,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.
Bye all.
Bye.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
You.
You too.